So if you think about it, of course, there is a lot of discussion about international position of the university, and that's usually measured in terms of the ranking. In either there are many rankings nowadays, but just to give an example, we have QS World University ranking or the Shanghai ranking, and they have different criteria. I hope we understand that these rankings are, of course, guidelines. They are not the goals, because of course, you don't want to end up with the system where you're just basically trying to game the system. You just hope that you are doing things which in kind of reasonable way. So, what are the rankings? We typically have a huge importance on the academic reputation. So academic reputation is basically how reputed your institution is. It's either viewed by taking surveys of the people, or looking at some kind of numbers, like in terms of publications and other things. Employer reputation, so basically what employers think about the students coming out of your organization, whether they're happy to hire them or not. Faculty to student ratio is obvious. Citations per faculty basically explains how many papers or cited citations are per professors or people working at the organization. International faculty ratio, international student ratio. And then we have Shanghai ranking is slightly different. We have quality of education, quality of staff, research output, per capita performance. Quality of the education is basically tells you how many like Nobel Prize winners are educated in the organization. So what are the highly ranked scientists coming out of your organization? Quality of the staff is basically similar, and also talking about some awards, and the research output is basically about the publications and so on. And then the last one, when you normalize it per number of people employed. So if you remember that we talked about it, PhD programs are aimed to educate. So intended learning outcomes, or the intended outcomes of PhD programs to educate next generation of top-level scientists and experts. We hope that they would be easily employed in different positions at different countries. So basically, if you think about it and you map what we are discussing to this ranking, you'll see that this red colors, okay, that's my subjective view, of course. Red colors are the ones which are directly aligned with the intended outcomes of the programs. Successful programs. We want to have educated next generation top level scientists. Quality of education is definitely impacting this. Academic reputation, of course, it's impacted by this. Employer reputation, of course, because we are educating people who would be easily employed and so on. And the blue is kind of indirectly. So if you have a successful PhD program, you have successful students, so they're writing a lot of papers, there are a lot of citations coming to you, and so on. And there's more collaboration, so it's indirectly affected. And of course, if you have a successful program, it means that you are attracting best students from any kind of countries. So that means, and then best people from different countries want to work for you. So that, of course, directly modifies this international faculty ratio, international student ratio. So that's kind of obvious what's coming in. So why we kind of, what's our experience? So if you look at the ranking at atmospheric science, it's been published only for 2 years now. So from 2018 and 2019. This is the latest one from 2019. You can see that University of Helsinki is in number 11. So it's pretty high in atmospheric science. And the University of Helsinki Institute of Atmospheric and Earth System Research is the place where we are doing atmospheric sciences. So there's no other organization within the university which is doing atmospheric sciences. So basically, INAR is the one which is responsible for that position. So let's look a little bit about staff statistics. What is INAR? What do we have? So this is the distribution of the people employed and their positions within the institute. So we have, if I summarized it roughly, we have about 11% of master and bachelor students, 33% of the PhD students, and 23 postdocs. So these are, I would call, young scientists, or I think in the EU speak, it would be early stage researchers. So these are, so we have in total about 260 people working, and about more than 50% of the people working for INAR are early stage researchers. So they are the PhD students or they just graduated postdocs. So that's the people who are directly affected by our PhD program. So you can also see that, for example, that only 11% of the people, master and bachelor students, are. So basically, what you see is that number of master and bachelor students is actually less than number of PhD students. It means that our PhD program is actually attracting people from different organizations within the university, well, within Finland, and as well quite actively attracting people from different countries. So we have students from various countries from EU, we have students from Russia, we have students from United States, Canada, China, etc. So if you want to do some math, we are generating about 900 papers over 4-year period. Why I selected 4 years? Because that's the period when we typically have that's the duration of the PhD studies. So about 300, more than 350, depends how I count. I didn't really count one by one paper because it's a lot of work. About 350 or 450 papers are co-authored by PhD students. So we are talking about roughly a little bit less, or about half of the number of papers generated in INAR with the help of the PhD students. So their contribution to the process is hugely impactful for our reputation as the organization. So to summarize, a successful PhD program is a must for if you want to have reputed research group organization. Again, you can, I mean, we are talking about, I cannot talk for the whole university. I can only talk for INAR. So it's for INAR, successful PhD program is absolutely important. Intended learning outcomes, or the intended outcomes of the PhD program are naturally aligned with the reputation criteria. So you have better students with the generate better science, write papers, more reputed your program. You have successful PhD program, it attracts better students, best faculty, and that creates a positive feedback for your organization. But also it means that your program should be open. It should be open to people from different backgrounds, cultural. You should be able to deal with any kinds of people because your goal of the program is attract the best students, because it directly affects your reputation. So it means that, like for example, in Finland, working language is English. We have people from many countries, and they seem to be quite happy inside of our organization. So these things are extremely important for our success of our program. Okay, thank you.